Hey, I'm Minte, and I wish this was just another family story. My husband and my own sister looked me in the face and told me I was too old to keep a man. Then they moved into my condo, slept in my bed like I was the ghost haunting their new life. I kept quiet, watching, waiting. But when I finally walked through that door again, what they saw wasn't the same woman they betrayed. You ever been betrayed so deep you start planning peace instead of revenge? Saturday mornings used to feel warm. Not the weather, the air. The feeling of home. Of footsteps down the hall. Bacon crackling on the pan. Cartoons echoing from the living room. This morning wasn't like that. It was too quiet. The kind of quiet that sits on your chest, like it knows something you don't. I shuffled to the kitchen. Old bones creaking louder than the floor. Made my coffee black. No sugar. Always been that way. Dropped the needle on my favorite Bill Withers vinyl, just loud enough to cut the silence. Still, the house felt empty. Sat down by the window, pocket watch in hand, the one my daddy left me. I rubbed my thumb across its face like it could tell time backward. Retirement wasn't supposed to feel like a sentence. Folks say you'll rest easy when it comes, but they don't warn you how loud the silence can be when the kids stop calling. My eyes caught the mantle. There she was, Gloria. Still beautiful, even behind glass, I whispered. They forgot about me, didn't they? Her smile, frozen in time, didn't argue, didn't have to. Later, in the kitchen, something felt off. A mug on the counter, red lipstick, not Gloria's kind. A box of herbal tea I sure as hell didn't buy. I leaned in, caught a scent in the air. Too sweet, too loud. Shonda's arrogance, I muttered under my breath. I remembered giving Vanola the spare key. Just in case, she said. For emergencies. I should have known better. Footsteps around midnight. A woman's laugh when I was supposed to be asleep. I brushed it off then. Told myself I was imagining things. I wanted to believe that. But it didn't sit right. And when things don't sit right, I don't either. The next morning, I left the door cracked and acted like I was heading out for my usual walk. Took the long way around, then slipped back in through the back, like I used to when Gloria was still here, and I'd forget the milk. I moved slow. No creaks, no warning. Then I saw them, Vanola and Shonda, on my couch, laughing, sitting too close, too damn comfortable. My heart didn't break. It caved in. Shonda, my daughter, said, "Ain't nobody checking for that old man no more." I didn't breathe. I backed out like a shadow, like I didn't belong in my own house. They didn't see me, but I saw them. And something in me changed. Hours passed. Couldn't remember how I got from the hallway to the study. My hands were moving on their own, pulling open drawers, maybe looking for a reason, maybe proof I didn't want. And there it was. Papers. Folded. Sloppy. Legal. Her signature. And Vanola's. My name too. It was my condo, no longer. A month ago, Shonda had rushed me through some insurance forms. I'd trusted her. My daughter, I didn't read them. I just signed. And now, they owned it all. Everything. You ever been robbed with a pen? I whispered to no one. Sometimes, the knife ain't in your back. It's in your hand. They just guided it. I sat there, documents in my lap, jaw locked so tight it hurt. Couldn't cry, couldn't think. Just Saturday, maybe an hour, maybe 10. When night fell, I pulled out an old journal. Same one I used when Gloria passed. Words didn't come easy, but I wrote. Hand shaking, eyes burning. I remembered the overtime shifts, the missed dreams, the busted knees and birthday cakes bought with coupons. All for her. And this is what she gave back? I thought about leaving. Packing up, disappearing. But why should I be the one to go? I closed the journal, stood slowly, and walked to the back closet. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside, leaning against the wall, was my daddy's cane. I grabbed it, tested its weight in my palm. This ain't over. Not by a long shot. The phone rang just after noon, right when I was finishing the crossword puzzle I'd started 2 days ago. It was Shonda. I could hear the sweetness in her voice. Thick like molasses and just as hard to swallow. She said, "Daddy, we'd love to have you for Sunday dinner. 6 o'clock. Vanola's making her famous cornbread." I paused. Her voice was all sugar, but I knew the taste would be bitter. Back when Gloria was alive, Sunday dinners were sacred. Roast in the oven, kids running around, that old church playlist humming in the background. We held hands, gave thanks, and passed stories along with the sweet potatoes. But those days were buried with her. I said yes, not because I believed the invite was real, but because sometimes you show up just to see if the lies taste better in person. I dusted off my late wife's pie recipe and picked up a bottle of root beer. Call it habit, or maybe just hope. When I arrived, Vinola was already seated at the head of the table like she owned the house, the people, and the air in it. Shonda floated around, calling out orders like she was hosting a game show. Everyone smiled too wide. Then they brought out a man's slick hair, expensive watch, fake charm. "This is Marcus," Shonda said, "our friend and lawyer." That last part hung in the air like smoke. Marcus started talking casually about elder care and power of attorney, like we were all sipping wine on a porch in the suburbs. I sat there, nodding, chewing slow. But inside, I was lining up the pieces. This wasn't a dinner. It was a setup. A dress rehearsal for whatever story they planned to tell the bank, or a judge, or whoever else they were, conning. And they invited me to the performance. You ever been invited to your own sentencing and didn't even know it? I watched. I listened. They were confident. Too confident. Thought I was too old, too soft, too tired. They were wrong. Halfway through dinner, Shonda looked at me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes and said, "Daddy, you've been forgetting stuff lately, haven't you?" I set my fork down. Vinola chimed in, voice syrupy. "We're just trying to make sure you're taken care of before things get worse." One of my grandkids, the youngest, looked up from his phone and said, "Didn't you forget your pills last week, Grandpa?" The air left my chest, slow and bitter. They'd rehearsed this, coached the kids, painted me as fading, slipping, ready to be handled. And there I Saturday, a ghost in my own bloodline, erased in plain sight. Even the neighbor Miss Eula from across the street was there. She chuckled awkwardly, like she'd walked in on a private argument and didn't know where to stand. I wanted to slam my hand on the table, call them out, yell. But then I remembered something my daddy once said. Never fight a snake in its pit. You wait till it's out. So I smiled. Asked Marcus how long he'd been practicing law. Complimented the dry chicken. Nodded at the kids. All while my mind was filing everything away. Don't let folks write your downfall in ink while you shouting in pencil. When dessert came out, store-bought, not even trying to pretend anymore, I stood up, adjusted my jacket, leaned on my cane. "This was enlightening," I said, steady and clear. "Y'all take care of my house, while you still living in it." Their smiles cracked. I walked out slow, cane tapping like a drumbeat. Step by step, each one louder than the words I wanted to scream. Back home, I didn't sit. Not yet. I pulled out an old file box from under the bed, legal papers, old deeds, a copy of my father's military pension paperwork. I dusted off a yellow notepad and started writing. Dates, times, names, who said what, who saw it. Then I called Charles. We served together in '73. He's a notary now, still sharp as a tack. I told him I'd need his help soon. Opened my laptop. Typed Michigan property laws. Then elder exploitation. Then reverse title fraud. Last, I pulled out my phone and replayed the last voicemail from Gloria. Her voice, calm and full of light. "Don't ever let them change who you are. You hear me?" I heard her. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to break a window. I just needed to be ready. They turned this into a war. I'll make sure I choose the battlefield. By Tuesday afternoon, my living room had turned into a war room. Papers spread out on the table, folders stacked like sandbags. Every signature, every date, every line, I looked at them with new eyes. I printed everything, made copies, lined them up by month. This wasn't about confusion anymore. It was about clarity. I called Jeremiah, an old postal worker buddy. He'd spent 40 years handling other people's mail, learning to spot when something didn't add up. He met me at his porch with that knowing look. "Family'll cut you deep," he said, tapping a cigarette against his knee. "But paper cuts last longer." He helped me sort the forms, taught me how to mark inconsistencies. By the time I left, I had a folder full of truth. At home, I locked the originals inside the metal safe behind Gloria's photo. The glass frame caught the afternoon light, made her smile look like a witness. As I closed the safe, I noticed my father's military papers tucked beneath the stack. The edges were yellowed, but the words "honorable discharge" still shone clear. He'd fought his battles with dignity. "If you can't outfight a man," he once told me, "outthink him." That stuck with me. The next morning, I brewed coffee and sat with my old tablet, the one Vinola used to check her email when she was over. She must have forgotten to log out. I wasn't looking for anything at first, just cleaning up the mess she'd left. But then I saw it. A message from her bank. Transfers. Big ones. Thousands. Moved from a joint account, my name on it. The same week I'd been laid up in the hospital with chest pains. My hand trembled, but not from weakness. They'd waited for me to be hooked up to machines to take what I'd built. That's when I learned, I whispered. Grief makes you blind, but betrayal teaches you how to see. I took screenshots of everything, emailed them to myself, labeled the folder Truth. Then I printed them out and filed them next to the deed copies. My hands were steady now. I wasn't just hurt anymore, I was focused. I grabbed my coat and headed downtown to the community legal aid office. The place was small, linoleum floors, flickering lights, but clean. Inside, a woman named Claudette greeted me. Sharp eyes, calm voice. She reminded me of my sister Lila, the kind who could quiet a room with a sentence. She looked through my stack without saying a word. When she finally spoke, it was slow and firm. "Mr. Minte, they committed elder fraud. You've got more power than you think." For the first time in weeks, someone believed me. The weight on my chest loosened a little. "We agreed to prepare a complaint but not file it yet. Better to gather everything first." Claudette said, "The law's slow, but so is karma. I can wait on both." When I stepped outside, Detroit's spring wind hit me clean. I walked the streets like a man, seeing his city for the first time again, tired but not beaten. That peace didn't last long. When I got back home, the red light on my answering machine blinked. I pressed play. Shonda's voice filled the room. "Vinola, Daddy's still poking around. We might need to speed things up before he does something stupid." The message ended. I deleted it. My hand didn't shake. My face didn't move. I just stood there, hearing her call me Daddy with that same tone she used when she was 6, when she trusted me to catch her if she fell off her bike. Somewhere along the way, trust turned into currency. I sat for a while, staring at the wall. Not out of weakness, but understanding. They were in this together. Whatever they started, they planned to finish. So I got up, put on my coat again, and walked 3 blocks to the old church. It was empty, just the creak of pews and the smell of dust and candles. I sat near the back, right under the same stained glass window Gloria used to love. "I ain't fighting for money, baby," I whispered. "I'm fighting to keep my name clean." In that silence, something shifted inside me. You can't let folks write your legacy in pencil while you're still breathing. When I stepped back outside, the sky had turned the color of pewter. I took out my pocket watch, felt its weight in my palm. The ticking was steady, patient. Time wasn't my enemy anymore. It was my weapon. If they thought I was done, they didn't know who raised me. The sun had just dipped behind the trees when I stepped up onto Shonda's porch. Every board beneath my feet creaked like it was protesting my arrival. I paused at the door, let out a breath, and reminded myself, I come as a man, not a victim. That was important. I wouldn't let them paint me weak. The door opened before I could knock. Vinola's smile was too wide, too quick. Shonda trailed behind her, voice syrupy. "Glad you could make it, Daddy." The air inside was tight, smelled like overcooked greens and rehearsed kindness. They sat me at the far end of the table, away from the main conversation. Nobody said it out loud, but I wasn't family tonight, I was company. The music playing low in the background was a hymn I used to lead at church. "I'll Fly Away." Felt like a joke. I looked across the table and saw nothing but actors in a play I didn't audition for. Mid-conversation, Shonda stood and adjusted the seating. "Actually," she said, "Vinola, why don't you sit here?" She nodded toward the middle. A folding chair was brought out for me low to the ground, creaky like a guest at the kids' table. One of the other guests chuckled. "We brought a chair for you, Pops. Hope you don't mind the guest bench." I didn't blink. I just sat down slow. laid my cane across my lap like a reminder. I don't raise my voice, I raise my presence. I asked about the condo title. Their eyes danced away like I'd mentioned a ghost. Let's not get into business tonight, Shonda said, waving it off with a laugh. They treat me like a placeholder. So, I watched them. Took mental notes. I didn't need to push, they were showing their cards without realizing. Then it happened. Shonda's phone buzzed on the table. She tapped it by accident while reaching for her glass. A voicemail started playing, her voice loud and sharp. He's snooping. We gotta move faster tonight. Silence fell. Forks froze. Someone coughed. Vanola stiffened, eyes darting. I stood. Calm. Controlled. Seems your trap sprung too early, I said, voice steady. Nobody moved. I let the moment hang. The words crackled in the air like static. Without another word, I turned and walked from the table, leaving candlelight flickering behind me. In the hallway, Shonda followed fast, heels tapping. I didn't turn around, just waited near the coat rack. You misunderstood, she started. I pulled the printout from my coat pocket, held it up. This your voice? She hesitated. Daddy, Don't lie with your lips while your phone betrays you. She tried to sidestep, eyes hard now. I moved into her path. You played with my name. You stole my roof. And now? You think you can twist my silence into consent? Her jaw clenched. She didn't answer. A guest peeked down the hall and quietly slipped back into the kitchen. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just stepped aside and said, face what you started, or keep running and hope it don't catch you. Then I walked out that house like it didn't belong to anyone who ever knew love. Back at my condo, I shut the door hard. Not in anger, in finality. That click echoed through my bones. I went to my father's rocking chair, the one nobody else dared sit in. I settled into it, for the first time in a long while, feeling like I still had ground to stand on. I laid every paper, photo, receipt across the table, one by one. This wasn't desperation anymore, this was blueprint. You can't scare me into silence, I whispered, voice low but clear. I've heard too many lies to be fooled now. The pocket watch ticked beside me. Same rhythm, same reminder. I stood, straightened my shoulders. Tonight wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming presence. They'd shown me their fear. Now I knew exactly where to strike. I rolled into the safe house just after dusk. My heart was still pounding hard enough to hurt. I set my bag on the worn couch and stood there a moment, letting every sound in the room settle around me. I pulled the papers from the duffel deeds, transfer forms, texts I'd hidden away. I fanned them out on the small table, the weight of it all pressing down. This was more than a fight for property now. They were trying to erase me. I rose up and faced the cracked mirror by the door. The man who looked back had steel in his eyes. He'd been pushed. He'd been erased. But he hadn't folded. I straightened my shoulders and whispered, I rise. The next morning, the first blow fell. A legal complaint filed in my name. Shonda accused me of harassment, claiming I threatened her at dinner. Followed her, made her unsafe. Copies went to neighbors, church members, community leaders. The papers painted me as the villain, twisted truth into a lie. I stared at the pages, keys of names, times, dates I never signed off on. I felt anger, fear, betrayal, all at once. But I did not break. I opened up the video from that dinner, the one showing me calm, her voice raised, and sent it to myself again, backing it up in multiple places. Let them try to gaslight me. By afternoon, I met with Trevante March in his modest office. I laid the complaint, the fake texts, the forged signatures before him. He read with a silent scowl. They're escalating, he said. You've got to strike first. Strike hard but clean. Delmore Quinn joined later, offering his old steady voice. You've got witnesses, he reminded. The dinner table had ears. Use them. That evening, Anisha showed up unannounced. Her face was drawn. Daddy, I heard, she said quietly. I leaned forward. I don't ask for loyalty anymore, just the truth. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I want to believe you. We sat in silence for a minute, two people, broken by lies. But silence has power too. The next day, in Trevante's office again, we laid the counterattack. Defamation. Freeze the condo's assets. Subpoena Shonda's phone. Document every communication. Every lie she planted would be dug up. I signed affidavit after affidavit. Trevante grinned. A subpoena in her mailbox speaks louder than her lies. He sent one to her condo that afternoon just before she hosted another family dinner. Word leaked. The community eyes shifted. Later that night, I drove past their building. Movers were hauling my things out. My furniture. My life. Through the front door. I stayed in the car. I didn't shout. I didn't even honk. I just watched. Moonlight gleamed on the pocket watch I held in my palm. Its tick matched my resolve. I'd been trapped. Cornered. But I wasn't caged. The trap they set was closing around them now. I stepped into the community hall that evening, the air buzzing with small talk, laughter, the hum of chandeliers lit for the family and legacy celebration. Faces I'd known all my life turned toward me, ministers, neighbors, folks whose greetings once rang warm. Now their eyes were cautious. I felt suspicion and curiosity in the same look. I carried a folder of evidence in my jacket, letting its weight remind me why I came. Shonda stood at the front, bathed in light, her smile too wide, too practiced. I inhaled slow. I didn't come to beg. I came to expose truth. Shonda took the podium and began speaking of new beginnings, how she and Vanola had transformed the condo into something beautiful and modern. She called me former husband, said it was time for our family to move on. The crowd applauded. My name vanished from her words. A neighbor stood and clapped, others nodded. It landed in my chest heavy, the erasure sting. I stayed seated, face neutral, but inside I was calibrating. I caught Anisha's eyes in the crowd, confusion and guilt flickering there. After the speeches ended, I followed Shonda into a side hallway, folder in hand. Fewer eyes there. I held out the folder. Here's your history, in case you forgot, I said. She sniffed, dismissive. Old paper, Minte, she replied. I quoted her own line from before. People forget who built it. Her lips curled. You think this changes anything? She spat. I stepped closer, voice firm. No, I know it will. You just don't know when. She slammed the folder shut and turned away without another word. Moments later, the main hall's screens flickered. The live feed had been streaming Shonda's own voicemail recorded weeks ago. Voices filled the room. Her own, Vanola's agreement, plans to frame me, threats to paint me crazy. The room went silent, stunned. Shonda's face turned, pale. Vanola's rigid. I walked down the aisle, every step measured, toward them. When I reached the stage, I said loudly, when your lies go public, you lose the darkness. The crowd stirred, heads turned. Some looked at me with new eyes. The event unraveled after that. The speeches stopped. People drifted out in small groups. I stood by the door, calm, allowing passers-by to see me upright, unashamed. Later, back at my condo, I placed the folder beside the pocket watch. I opened my laptop and began drafting a press statement not to fuel revenge, but to set the record straight. My voice would not be silent any longer. I whispered to the empty room. They made my story public, now I'll own it. I walked into that courtroom with my back straight, chin level, suit ironed just right. My folder in hand, my story tucked between those sheets like bricks in a wall. The gallery was already packed neighbors in their Sunday best, church folks whispering behind programs, reporters with notepads half hidden in their laps. Shonda sat across from me, beside Vanola. Their faces were carved from something cold. They didn't flinch when I entered, didn't look my way. But I knew they felt it, the shift. The judge called the case to order. My name echoed off the walls and my pulse ticked hard in my throat. Every long night spent in silence led here. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about drawing the line. And I was standing on it. I stepped up and laid out the papers. First, the deed transfers. Then the copies of her forged signature. The subpoenaed records. The voicemail loud and clear. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. My words were clean. Truth is loud all by itself. Then came the countersuit. Defamation and elder abuse. Gasps trickled through the gallery. Shonda's complexion drained like she hadn't expected. I'd push back with facts. The judge leaned forward, asked for a response. Shonda started to speak, then stammered, words catching like broken teeth. I didn't blink. Your Honor, I said, truth must not bow to deception. He looked at the file, looked at her, looked at me, then announced a temporary freeze on the condo assets, said the evidence warranted further review. When the gavel came down, it wasn't loud, but it shook something inside me loose. Reporters were already waiting outside, mics up, cameras flashing. I didn't give a speech, just said, "I didn't wake to fight, but I won't sleep through injustice." Some neighbors nodded. One man clapped slow. The crowd thinned. People whispered now, but not about me. Not as the fool or the old man out of touch. Vinola wouldn't meet my eyes. Shonda stared off at nothing. Anisha, though she stood beside me, quiet, strong, her hand brushed mine for a moment. That was enough. Later, back at the condo, a knock came. It wasn't a threat this time, it was the county property office. They handed me papers. The condo title restored, their seal fresh. I unlocked my front door like I had done for decades, only this time, it felt earned. Furniture was returned to its place, like it remembered where it belonged. I stood in front of the window, same view, but something inside me looked different now. "Home is mine again," I whispered. But it's not the same. That night, I hosted a small gathering. Folks from the neighborhood, a few old friends, even the pastor came by. We didn't talk about lawsuits. We ate simple food, told stories, laughed at things that weren't funny until now. When the room quieted, I stood up, held out the old pocket watch. My voice didn't waver. "This place holds my blood and my sweat, and now it holds my truth." I handed the watch to Anisha. She took it with both hands, her eyes wet but proud. "We rebuild," I said, "but we never forget." The room clapped. Some stood. Others just closed their eyes and breathed. And me, I didn't feel like a man who won. I felt like a man who finally came home.